Hey everybody, what is up? It is Drew of the DrewXperience, the voice of Canadian conservative politics and geopolitics with Canada's role in Iran advocacy, considering that we have a sizable demographic of diaspora and how Canada can play a role to be the voice of the diaspora in an ever-changing world where the Islamic Republic's almost falling. But more today about Canadian politics, which is my bread and butter. Make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe button and hype the video. It does help get the algorithm going. But joining me today is, wow, I've tried to get this guy on since I met him at the convention in January. And I got to thank our mutual friend, Dimpy Brar. So you guys better follow her if you don't want to see amazing conservative analysis. Dimpy, I got to thank you for this. The shout outs to you. I promised I'd do that. But joining me today is a legend, like a legendary Pokemon. We got Josh from the Elev8 Podcast, a proud Tory from the Maritimes, who doesn't hold back when it comes to Canadian conservatism. And we're talking about what it means to be a conservative in Atlantic Canada and how we can bridge the gaps and have the hard conversations needed to take on the Liberals. Let's get into it. How are you doing today, Josh?
Doing good, Drew. How you holding up, my man?
That's great. I hope the intro was good. Like I had to make sure it was.
Yeah, it was
good.
electric, dude. It was electric. Thank you for it.
No worries. Yeah, it's great to have you on. A big honor because I've been watching. I came across your show in 2024, actually, like right after the Toronto by-election that Don Stewart won, and then every time it kept coming into my feed, like yours and at the time Reg. By the way, shout out to Reg. He couldn't be with us today, but Reg is another legend of the show that was like your co-host, I guess. And, you guys were doing great stuff, covering the end of the Trudeau era. And what I really liked about both you and Reg was you were never coming from a position of like, say, negativity or anger. It was more based on facts, but also it was in a calm manner. So I don't know if that's a maritime thing, but you guys were really good at delivering like what was going on very calmly, as a matter of fact, I have to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It could be a maritime thing. It's funny. I do live here in Halifax now, but I'm not originally from here, so I'll never claim to be a maritimer. I was actually I'm born in Toronto, moved around a lot. I've been all over the country, just due to my parents' jobs. But so I've experienced a lot of different things. But however, Reg is a true maritimer. He was born here. He was born in New Brunswick, lives in Halifax now, and he's seen and done a lot. And the thing you mentioned about having calmer voices, I think you could say that about Reg. I don't know if you could say that about me, but I appreciate you saying that. But I think the big thing too with me and Reg working together is it helps us stay level. When you're doing this on your own, it's easy to get caught up in your own world. But when you're with people and kind of able to kind of bring it back down to center, it's really helpful. And I think that also comes through to our listeners.
That's a fantastic way of looking at it. So obviously, I came across your show in 2024, as I was just mentioning earlier. But what led you guys to like cover Canadian politics? Because I do remember, Reg, and you were discussing how you were doing like some local politics kind of after COVID, and then it kind of just grew and grew. So what led to start to doing what you guys do? And did you have any previous niche ideas before stepping into Canadian politics?
Well, it's funny. So the Elev8 Podcast is what it used to be called. Now we're the Elev8 Report. And what we were was a show focused on business, marketing, and design, which was totally my bread and butter and what I would do. And I actually had a different host. His name was Dalton. And that's what we did. And we only started the show just because we were just needing something to do during COVID. We started, I think, day 3 after the lockdown started. And we did record once a week. And then over time, we started clipping up our stuff, throwing it up on TikTok. And then it was one day, actually, my host Dalton, co-host Dalton at the time, had a really cool video and take on what was happening with affordable housing and lack thereof here in Nova Scotia. And then all of a sudden, people started coming to us for politics stuff. And then the vaccine mandates came in, and then we started talking a little bit more about that stuff. And then before you knew it, we were head first to talking politics. And so it got to the point where my co-host Dalton's like, this isn't exactly what I signed up for. I think I want to go separate ways. I don't really want to get into the more political stuff. So you're happy to go on your own. And, at the time I just met Reg. And so we brought Reg on and he took Dalton's place. And we then became a show focused on getting into federal politics. And that's kind of where it grew and grew from there. And actually, a story that's very well known at this point. We actually were covering the Calistani vote in Calgary at the time. This was a couple summers ago now. And we were just talking about it, and we didn't say much about it. We just talked about how it seemed weird that we had a vote on if Khalistan should, become its own nation and separate from India. And I was like, why are we doing that in Calgary? And it was happening at City Hall and all this nonsense. And so we just thought it was weird. And then we clipped that, put it on TikTok, and, within like 30 minutes, that TikTok had probably 80, 90,000, over 100,000 views. It was popping like crazy. Like, it was growing steadily and fast. And we didn't say anything crazy. We just said, this is weird. And before you knew it, Reg's employer had him brought him into the office, says, you got to make a decision. Either you're going to have your job or you're going to continue the podcast. Which one's going to be? At the time, Reg said, well, I'm going to pick my job. And he called me. He's like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, I understand, man. You got to do what you got to do. You got to take care of your family. And so we went our separate ways. And then I ended up becoming a solo man show doing this. And that's how the show became what it is now, is me just doing it. And now that Reg has now since moved on from a different employer, and now he's living, he does something different now. So he's able to come on once a week now. Mm-hmm. So we were able to bring him back in the fold in a bit of a different role. And that's how it's all gone down, man. That's, I guess, the long and short of how we became what we are today.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think everyone's show starts off as something else. Like, my original show was basically UFC, MMA, kickboxing, combat sports.
Nice.
And then if you look at all my past episodes, like, I was the voice for my style of karate. I do Kyokushin. It's the one that GSP does. And I was like I go to the tournament, I try to interview fighters, do photography, interview like former legends. And then I think once the election happened, something just clicked where I felt it was my calling to go back to politics, because I grew up in a political household. My father was a Bush Republican, very pro Harper during the 2006 up until he passed away in 2014, and then kind of lost my way with politics. But I used to like be a nerd with it too. And then just with the election, I just felt like, hey, you have to. You can complain and do nothing, or you could complain and do something, and then still complain after, regardless of the result. And that's what happened. I still do my combat sports content, but I just feel like Canadian politics is where it's at, because we don't have many conservative voices. We have like you, Jasmine, Ellie, Mario, Elliot from Right Call. Sorry, Elliot. There's just too many shows to remember. But I feel we need to be a voice in this, and what's basically a left biased landscape in Canada.
Yeah, I would say so. And, I think also I want to kind of harken back to something too, which I thought was interesting, is so when we first started the show, me and Dalton, we actually created a Google Doc of like what we wanted the show to be. And we were talking about our interests and things that we were interested in talking about. Mm-hmm. And politics was one of the first things at the top of the list. And we're just like, oh, we can't do a show on politics. That's crazy. So we'll do one on business that's a little less divisive. And so it was funny when we ended up getting kind of thrusted into the political realm. We went back to our Google Doc, which that was the first thing said we wanted to talk about, because it was something that was passionate to us, as you were just saying for yourself. And I think that's kind of it, where it's like eventually the world kind of works in odd ways, and if you are a believer, God works in mysterious ways and kind of it throws you where you need to be and where you need to grow. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I definitely agree with that there, because I think, whether you like Pierre Poilievre or not, I think in a way he has this way of influencing people, especially like our generation, Gen Z, millennials, to get involved with politics, whether it's to do podcasts, whether it's to run for EDAs, whether it's to just get involved and understand the system. And for me, what got me involved with him was what really got me involved to come out as a conservative. And it was much easier to admit I'm neurodivergent than it is to say I'm conservative. Kind of coined that from Melissa Lantzman, who said it was easier for her to admit she was lesbian than it is to say she's conservative, was when Bill S203 came out for the autism awareness. Because the problem is, we have the problem is, like, when you have special needs, be it, autism, be it a physical disability or any other mental challenges, it's so easy to lose whatever tax credits or kind of like government assistance you get once you turn 18. And then you're kind of left to the system that's very broken, overspent. It's like as if the system is still operating as if it's from 1995 and not 2026. And I think Bill S203 was a great initiative because of Pierre's nonverbal daughter, but also Senator Leo Housakos, who was my first political guest that I had on. It was like greatest moments of my life, because those are the ones that really got me involved to start doing being conservative. But also I would say Brian Mulroney as well was an influence. I read his book Memoirs after the election, and then learning about Stockwell Day, you know, the old reform days, and, you know, whether you like or agree with Stockwell or not, like that's what really influenced my views as a conservative. So I wouldn't say I'm like a total blue conservative. I hate the term red Tory. It's become so overused. I think it's extinct. It's either you're liberal or conservative. I just coin it as, look, I'm a light blue Tory. You know, some say small c. No, it's light blue Tory. That's my new term I use. So that's how I got conservative. And what led you to becoming more conservative? Because I think we all kind of grow up like kind of like aware or vote liberal until something changes in our lives.
Yeah, that's fair. It's I'm actually kind of, if that's the pattern that you're seeing, I definitely buck that pattern. Mm-hmm. I actually come from a very conservative family and very pro Harper family. And that was kind of always, and it's funny because like we never really talked about politics outside the home much. But inside the home, we would, you know, talk about what's going on with the day, whether it be what's happening with hockey or football or politics or, you know, news of the day. Like, we talked about everything around the dinner table. And so naturally politics would come up from time to time. And that was just kind of, as time went on and I started kind of having a specific perspective on different issues, you start realizing, oh, okay, I guess that falls more into the conservative camp, I guess. Interesting. I didn't really think much about it. And I think it was actually in 2004. Yeah, it was 2004, the first election win for the Conservative Party. Yes. And they replayed the electoral decision coming through in my middle school in our auditorium. And, you know, and so they replayed it, and then, you know, the CPC goes, and it's a conservative win for Stephen Harper. And I was like, yeah, you know, and, you know, my heart, I'm like, this is great. And then as I'm having that moment personally, I look around and all I hear is boos, everyone booing, boo. I was like, wasn't this not a good thing? I thought Harper was pretty cool. Everyone hates him. What's going on? And that was my moment. I was like, I am very much alone. And again, I grew up in Michael Ignatieff's old riding, a very liberal area. And it was what it was. You know, it's just like, okay, so I'm alone in this. And then as I grew up and, you know, when I eventually became a Christian, I acknowledged I was alone on that too. You know, like living in Toronto, we have these beliefs of belief in God or belief or identify more as a conservative voter, you will be alone. You are alone. And I think that's just a reality, and it's something I acknowledged at a young age, and I became very comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I've always been very used to being the only person who believes what he believes, and I am not shy to the confrontation or tension that comes with that.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way. I'm willing to have a dialogue. I just have to correct you on one thing. Harper won in 2006. 2004, there was an election, but it was expected to be the Paul Martin supermajority of majorities. And because the Conservatives and the Alliance had just merged, they're still figuring it out. But it was such an upset that it was a minority liberal government. But 2006, if you remember, that's when it was. I remember that too. I was in in Quebec, we have grade 8 is called Sec 2. And I remember that being that election that time, and it was like everyone was shocked. In Quebec, everyone was like, oh my God, they did it. It's like the Conservatives won. It's like the liberal years of the close to two, decade of dominance under Chrétien, and then supposedly Martin is over. Like, Harper slayed the liberal dragon. And then we had like that one minority. And then there was like the time where the Bloc, the Liberals, and the NDP tried to team up to take down Harper. And then finally it was like, okay, we are going to give Harper his majority, so we don't have to go through this every year. And it was nice. Those were some good years. Like, I really missed that period of kind of 2011 to 2015.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure. And I thank you for the correction. Yeah, I always get 04 and 06 mixed up. But yes, that was definitely, because it would have been spring of 06, right? The election took.
Winter. It was like, because if you remember, I'm not sure if you were in Ontario at the time, because you said Michael Ignatieff's riding, but there was the Boxing Day shooting that happened at Eaton Centre, and then there was the sponsorship scandal with the Liberals. So it was like one thing after the other that just kept like piling on, and just, I guess, you know, the Conservatives had momentum finally with that.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, it's fun to kind of get into these pieces of details back. Yeah, I remember this now. Yeah, I think these are kind of, you know, it was a time, and I think at this point in time, I think everything has happened has kind of been the building blocks leading to what we are at now, and now we're witnessing something very different. You know, I stand by the perspective of the Stephen Harper days and the Stephen Harper method of governing doesn't work for 2026, unfortunately. Things have changed so drastically. And a lot of it's because of how extreme the Liberals have become, that it requires a specific response, and it can't be a moderate milquetoast response. It has to be something fairly strong, which wasn't required back in 2006, 2010, or 2015, or sorry, 2011, 2015 was one of those. And yeah.
I'm good with dates. I'm sorry. It's the autism.
We love our autistic homies. It's great. I love you guys. You guys keep us honest. But yeah, these are just the things, right? That type of more moderate style of governing just doesn't work for 2026. And I think that's where a lot of the tension lies right now. We were talking just before we started recording, is the tension that's happening in the Conservative Party or in conservative circles of, I believe this, you believe that, well, I believe that, and you believe this. And it's a lot because things have changed, and there's folks who don't realize it's changed, and they think we just got to keep doing what we've been doing. I was like, clearly it's not working. And then there's this like kind of new way of thinking and kind of more so creative thinking that's going to be required to win. And that's been uncomfortable for a lot of the old heads. So yeah.
Very true. I definitely agree, because I'm from Quebec, and it's something that I really want to get nitty gritty with, because I feel the Conservatives in the Maritimes and Quebec are very similar. The only thing that kind of separates us is obviously geography, but also language. There's like, Quebec is predominantly French, and their definition of conservatism is different. And then in the Maritimes, you have your definition of conservatism, but there is some French-speaking Canadians, the Acadians in New Brunswick, and I really feel like Quebec and the Atlantic can come together, because I see what you're building, because I know, like, from what I've heard, like, you're trying to build like not like a movement, but in terms of like or an organization. I don't know what the term is, but you could tell me about it if you're willing to speak about it. Is this a way to help Maritimers make educated decisions? Because we've seen it time and time again. It's a liberal win. And there are conservatives in the Maritimes, but just how do we help them see that there's other options other than the liberals? Same thing in Quebec. So I wanted to ask you about that, like where you think, like why the Maritimes always vote liberal, but they are normally conservative in some regards.
Well, I think the Maritimes, I do find recently a lot of political analysts sleep on the Maritimes. They do sleep on Atlantic Canada a lot. Meanwhile, they set the tone for a lot of elections. If it goes blue for an election, it's likely going blue for that election. If it's going red, if Atlantic Canada goes red, then it's likely going red that election. And that's kind of what happened here, where there was a lot of, in Nova Scotia, our average age is more of that boomer age. And that population was more very on board with the let's fight Trump in the US. But the problem is the Conservatives also struggle to distinguish themselves from the Liberals last election too. So you heard Mark Carney saying we're going elbows up, and you heard Poilievre saying something along the same lines, but a little bit different. People are just like, well, I'm going to go with the guy who says he's going to do it. And unfortunately, Conservatives didn't do a great job of distinguishing themselves until it was too late in that election, when they were kind of thrown that bit of a curveball. And that's kind of where Atlantic Canada, was attracted to. But what I've been finding, gone to several different communities, even when I'm out playing golf or I'm out at the grocery stores, I'm talking to people. I'll be honest, the anti-Americanism is very much not the thing for people out here. They are starting to realize the writing on the wall and how it's hurting our economy, and realizing that this elbows up stuff's not really helpful. And you have talks with people, and it's like, well, that's what I want. Like, that's where they see it. They acknowledge that it's an issue. The problem that we're seeing, though, especially out here in Atlantic Canada, is they just don't see the Conservatives as a viable option. And the reason why is, I think a lot of it is, there's a lot of different theories. There's a lot of people who feel like Poilievre's just not palatable. He's the 44th, like Reg has this standpoint, and I'll speak for his perspective on this, where he thinks the 44th Parliament was so toxic that Poilievre can't get away from that toxicity. Jagmeet Singh was sent out. Justin Trudeau was sent out. Poilievre was the only one that stuck on. Yet the muck and the mire from that 44th Parliament kind of stuck to him in the last election, unfortunately. And so there might be something there as well. Because when you talk to Maritimers, it's a very their stances are very fascinating. So it's a very, believe it or not, Atlantic Canadians are actually very conservative. But the problem is, because we've had such an issue with our economies and how like the the soul of the maritime provinces were kind of ripped out of their chests when globalism started taking more things over. Industry started moving out of the province. It left a lot of towns empty and cold, and which led to these provinces becoming, well, that term we use is the have nothing provinces, and they relied heavily on a lot of government subsidy to survive. And that's what happens is Atlantic Canadians have conservative values, but when it comes to the social aspect in terms of how social programs work, they're very liberal and will vote for anyone that will preserve their programs because they're reliant on it, unfortunately, until we start getting our provinces up and off the ground again. That's just a reality that we face here. And so I think that is the nuance I think people forget and don't realize about Atlantic Canadians is they are very conservative. It's just when you ever hear the fear tactic, and was used in the last election too, that Pierre is going to take away all your programs. He doesn't care about you. All of a sudden that freaks them out too. As much as the Trump stuff, a lot of it had to do with around social programs here. And when that lie started being espoused, that was a hard one to get out from under.
Yeah, that too. And it's the same thing in Quebec. Like the minute they started bringing up abortion, it's like Pierre's gonna, he's gonna start, opening the books on abortion again. And that gets a lot of Quebecers very antsy. Also the social programs, because we do depend, the province does depend on, it's like Quebec's known as the nanny state of Canada, basically. And it's just a big problem. And, we could have won in one riding in Montreal, but it's the typical Sherbrooke, Quebec City ridings that will go conservative, like Gerard Detel, Beauce with Jason Grulot. And then there's like a few more. Now there's the by-election in Chicoutimi, which was like a conservative stronghold for 15 years. And it's like, oh, great. It's like, now how's that going to go? Because it's like, some say we're never getting, like, by we, I mean, I vote conservative, Josh, you vote conservative, but I shouldn't say we, but there's some in the party that I've spoken with, off the record, and they've said, we're never getting that back. Like, it's over. Like, it's going to go Bloc or Liberal now. Like, it's enough. And if we lose a Quebec seat, that it's like, this really hurts the party, because if you want to win the election, yes, you need Ontario, but you also need some of Quebec too. And this idea of depending on an orange wave repeating, it's not coming back anytime soon. Like, I think a lot of conservatives too have to get out of that 2011 mindset and realize that the Liberals basically ate the NDP's lunch. And this is where we are now from that 44th Parliament too, which I agree with Reg on. So, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, because I kind of see where you're coming from with Atlantic Canada, but based on what I've told you about Quebec, what are your thoughts on it? Or based on whoever else you've spoken to about it?
In terms of like how the last parliament went?
No, just like with the election result in Quebec, because like there was like before like the result happened, we were very optimistic. We're like, finally, we're going to get through that donut of Montreal. Like there's going to maybe be like 2 to 3 ridings that are going to flip blue. But by the time it happened, it was still the repeat of last time where it's just the same ones. And then obviously the one that really almost went blue was Mount Royal between Anthony Housefather and Neil Oberman. But Housefather pulled out the miracle again, man. It's like you got to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to try to even, especially as an Anglophone, try to explain Quebec's politics. I know there's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to consider. But from just an outsider looking in, when it comes to winning over Quebec, I'll let you speak to this because I'm curious. Something that I've noticed is Quebec is, this is going to sound crazy. I find Quebec in terms of patriotism is very similar to the Americans than any other part of the country. They are different, but they are the same. And what I mean is, you ever so much as threaten language, or even threaten, especially if you threaten Quebec of itself, or if you were an outsider threatening the country of Canada that they supposedly hate so much. But if you're an outsider and you say something against Canada, they will come after you. And I think the Trump stuff actually probably had the most impact on Quebec itself because of that. I still remember Montreal Canadian fans booing the American national anthem in 2004 during a playoff series between Boston and Montreal. I was just like,
the Iraq War.
Yeah, there it is, right? Like, this is like, it's always been highly sensitive to that American Canadian relationship. So when I saw the Trump stuff pop up with the 51st state and yada yada, I was like, of course, the first place I was like, yeah, they're going red. Like Quebec's going red. There was no doubt in my mind, just because of that reason.
Another thing too is like, because like they kind of look at Quebec the way like some, I can't speak for all Tories in Quebec, but I can speak for myself and some I've spoken with. We kind of feel by we, it's me and those I've spoken with, for the record, even though it's off the record. We kind of feel that the CPC HQ kind of looks at Quebec as like no man's land and winning, because it's going to always be bloc and liberal. So let's just try to get our 4 safe ridings in Quebec, and then we'll just, focus on the rest of the country. But I really feel there are ways to win in Montreal. Like, I mean, in the last election municipally, I'm sure you heard about it. There was like one riding that was decided by one vote. It was Côte St. Luc. And the candidate, the mayor, David Torgman, ran as a federal candidate in 2019. Here's the parallel, Josh. He's a mayoral candidate, and this is where CPC can build a ground game locally in the other levels, provincial, municipal, forge those relationships so they have a machine going. Because let's be real, the Liberals and the Bloc, when it comes to federal election time, and it's time to go clutch in the fourth quarter, that machine gets working like it's no one's business. And then this is where we are. And we're pointing fingers, as you said, like, we're doing this wrong, you're doing this right. This influencer is not an influencer, he's an enemy. Pick the complaint, the grievance. That's where I feel we're at. But I feel there are solutions with provinces like Quebec by building a sustainable ground game at all levels, if that's something you agree with.
Sorry, yeah, I could say that. I think it's really important. Me and Reg talked about this a lot. Regardless of the area, it's really important to establish, understand local politics, because it all feeds up into the federal level. And I think that's a great point, is it's really key to have allies at all levels of government, and especially those who are winning these areas, because then it gives you a clue and a signal to like, okay, what's working with this area, what's not, what messaging works for this area, what doesn't. And so I would actually tend to agree with that.
That makes sense. That's something that I've been trying to bring up. Like, we need to be more relationship-like and less policy-like. Like, let's start building those relationships, and then the policy people can come in to help us. Where do you feel, I mean, this is a tough question. I mean, when it comes to the Conservative Party, so I'm going to ask it like this. What do you feel the Conservatives did great on? I think we all know where that's going. But where do you feel in your mind that they could have improved or could have really done a better job in order to get over the hump? Because there were positives, but in every stage, you have to look at where you need to improve, because there's no such thing as perfection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly well documented. It's funny that you're bringing this up, because this is no slight at you. I hate talking about the election at this point. I'm kind of in the headspace of like moving forward, but I think you have a good point there of a way to move forward and look forward. And so what I thought they did well is their messaging pre-carbon was amazing. Like, I talked about it the other day, where they won the argument on the carbon tax, which underneath Aaron O'Toole, he had surrendered that issue and said, we actually need a carbon tax platform in order to compete with the Liberals. And Poilievre came in, he's like, no, we're not doing that whatsoever. We're going to fight them on this. And they ended up winning the debate, forcing Mark Carney to come in and saying, yeah, we're going to have no consumer carbon tax. Like, just for the sake of winning an election. He didn't do that. He actually would have hurt his chances of winning. So the Conservatives forced the Liberals to move on an issue. And that was some great positivity. And there's some other issues that they've been able to do that with. It's just, that's something they need to build on moving forward, is take a look at what they did with the carbon tax and apply that to all these different areas and force the Liberals to move. Another area they're forcing them to move on is immigration. That was a dirty word. Now all of a sudden, all the pressure the Conservatives have put on them are forcing Mark Carney to acknowledge it's an issue. We can have a debate if it's actually being solved or not, but at the very minimum, he is espousing rhetoric that is frustrating the NDP supporters. And like, yeah, we gotta deal with immigration. It's a problem, And again, conservative pressure on these specific moments is forcing the Liberals to move, which previously or typically, it's Liberals that they create the sandbox to force the Conservatives to play in. And I think that those are some positives that they can be built on moving forward. What I saw, kind of what was a misstep in the election itself, It happened long before there was an election called, and it was when the moment Justin Trudeau announced he was stepping down, and they're going to launch this leadership race to see who is going to take over Liberal leadership. I've been documented saying this plenty of times. I think it was a mistake for Poilievre, the Conservative Party, to also go into hiding when they did. Everything was radio silence. Everything was focused on Liberals in their leadership race, and that was an issue. The comparison I make is Brian Mulroney when Pierre Trudeau was having tough times in the polls and he was forced to step down. The Liberals tried to make the focus the Liberal leadership race, and Brian Mulroney, to be fair, with the permission of Pierre Trudeau, went down to meet with Ronald Reagan down in the White House, who was also putting tariffs on Canada at the time, specifically in Ontario. And Brian Mulroney built a great relationship, and they moved on. And all of a sudden, Brian Mulroney looked like a prime minister to people. And it took all the wind out of the sails of the Liberal leadership race. No one focused on that. It was all about Mulroney and Reagan. Then the election came through, and Mulroney won in convincing fashion. The mistake Poilievre made was not doing that. And the argument that was made to me was like, well, Trudeau would have never given me permission to go down. And to that, I say, I hear you. But the reality is, look at what Trudeau has done to our nation. Look what the Liberals have done. Look at all the cheating and the things they've done to our institutions. It's time that you stop playing by the rules and go win for our country and go do something for our country. Poilievre should have gone down to the White House to talk to Donald Trump. He should have looked like a prime minister in a time when things are chaotic. He should have gone down, had a conversation, tried to work out what the heck's going on with these tariffs, and look like a prime minister before the Carney could come in and sweep up, which is what he did. Conservatives went into hiding. Nothing happened. Carney swooped in, looked like an amazing prime minister, the grand negotiator that he sold himself as. People bought it. And then the election was called. Then Poilievre started doing the legwork, and he was too late.
That's a good point. Also, too, something that Reg brought up was from a previous episode, it's documented about parachuting of candidates. That's something that's been solved, but that was something that was a big issue too. After the election, which was I heard a lot of complaints of. Luckily in my riding, it wasn't like that, but the stories I heard were they get they'll get the grassroots, get their candidate ready, and then party brass comes in and they're like, nope, we're putting this person in, and it angers a lot of people because then that candidate who's grassroots knows the riding, they know the demographics, they know what to do. Whereas the parachuted candidate, like Reg spoke to about this, where he said they didn't even know who the constituents were. I'm paraphrasing here, and there was that. Also, the the muzzling of MPs. Now we see the MPs go on and they're working magic, like Shuv, Melissa Lantsman, pick your name. We're really seeing the talent of this team, whereas before it was the Pierre show and the rallies. Look, they were nice and spectacle, but it's okay, can you showcase your MPs and why they're running? Promote them. Look, I do combat sports. Still did and do. I hype up the fighter. The MPs are your fighters. You have to hype them up so that people know who they are. But it was always the Pierre and Anna show, and there's nothing wrong with it. But then it kind of got a little redundant after, and that's what I heard from others. And there was good things, which I've moved on from, but we have to look at where it needs to be improved. But that's a very good point you said with making the Brian Mulroney comparison, going to Reagan, and Pierre could have done that no matter what. He still could have kind of looked as an actual prime minister in waiting, no matter what you think of President Trump. I think it could have kind of calmed things down to a degree. Because look what President Trump said. He's no conservative. We saw that famous interview, and it was I think all of us were like, what? It's what's going on? That's the reaction with my hand. I'm sure we're all face palming ourselves at one point.
Well, and think of that. There was a special time too, because it was the reason why I say that is because there was the time where we literally didn't have a prime minister. It was prime for people to look to someone for leadership. The opportunity was there. And the other thing I was very critical of Doug Ford of doing, and all these different liberal strategists, or not strategists, but liberal MPs, or Mark Carney himself, when it came to these trade negotiations, is we got to talk to the Americans to try and get these tariffs off. And so they go on CNN. They went on all these perceived left-wing news shows when Trump's base is watching the podcast. They're watching Fox News. And they refused to go on any of those. Danielle Smith went on Fox Business. At least she knew where the audience was.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of performative nonsense that also takes place where that we're seeing during these negotiations at the moment, where like these are the moments that you could have gone into the American culture that is MAGA, whether you like it or hate it. That's the base. That's who's controlling government in the United States. Go talk to them. No.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what much more to do for you. It just doesn't seem like if you were not willing to go talk to that audience, and this is me talking about more so like Dominic LeBlanc, like these are the people I'm talking about right now, Doug Ford. If you're not willing to go down there and have those conversations, then you don't actually want to win for Canada. And that's my perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. I definitely agree there. I also think too, you could push back on this too. I mean, Brian Lilly, who was with us at the convention and also at the influencer party. Shout out to Brian, great guy, got me a beer, and he also gave you. He's very complimentary of you and the other ones of the other influencers at the bar that it was at. But Brian put out a very interesting article where he's like because they were all talking about like the rift between Poilievre and Premier and Doug Ford. And I kind of like what Brian said because it kind of brings it into perspective where it's like you can criticize Doug Ford all you want, but some of it also falls on the responsibility of Poilievre too, because there was a famous time where Poilievre won the leadership. He never called back Ford. Then, there was the famous, there was a meeting that happened where someone said to Ford's people were in the room and it was like some event and they said and I'm paraphrasing here, but the articles on Substack and whatnot. Look up Brian Lilly, guys, free plug for Brian. And they said, when you're prime minister, you're going to have to speak with Premier Doug Ford for the relationship. And Poilievre conceitedly said, from what it sounded, it came off conceited, when I'm prime minister, he's gonna have to talk to me. And when I read that, I was just like, I like Pierre a lot, but Josh, you can't say that until you win. It's like saying it's like you being in like the semifinals for hockey and and you're just gonna like think you have it in the bag. It doesn't work like that. Like you have to talk with people, even if you disagree with them. And I think there was an opportunity there for them to like say, look, we disagree with each other. I disagree with Corey tonight. I don't like this and that, etc. Whatever. But here's where we can find common ground. I think that was missing between them. So I think if there could have been some form of peace, I think the outcome could have gone another way. You could push back on that. That's just my opinion based on like what I've laid out there.
I mean, it's been pretty well documented that Brian Lilly's article is fairly accurate. There hasn't been anyone that's come out saying anything that was necessarily wrong about what he wrote. Mm-hmm. This goes back to, I'm not going to get maybe too much into that, but more so it focuses on how you said it yourself, the importance of relationships and building those allies, even with people that you dislike and don't want to ally with. The reality is what the reality is. We have an issue at the moment with a Liberal government that's increasingly un-Canadian, is not operating by Canadian values or Western values. And so, like you can have your perspective and thoughts on the likes of Doug Ford or, these other premiers. But at the end of the day, they won their areas. They won the vote of their constituents, and you have to hear them out. And I get where I think the Poilievre situation, like that happened like fairly shortly after he won the leadership. Mm-hmm. And, and so there's a little bit of hubris there because Trudeau is in and Conservatives were going to mop the floor with Trudeau. And that's kind of how it was. No one really foresaw, let's be honest, that Trump would win again. And the first thing he's going to say he was going to make jokes about was ridiculing Justin Trudeau and saying that we should become the 51st state. I don't think anyone foresaw that happening. And then Mark Carney swooping in. So I think that's, something to kind of keep in mind. But I'm, you like to bring up sports analogies. I'm kind of in the similar headspace where the phrase I live by is excuses are for losers. And we can make all the excuses we want. But the reality is what the reality is. We have to figure out how to adapt. And that's kind of where my headspace is at. That's why I've actually made a concerted effort, and I try not to talk about anything with the election anymore because it's just like it's just kind of like loser talk at this point, and we have to focus on like, all right, what's our current situation? Okay, our current situation is we know more about the tariff dispute. We know more about the tension that's taking place. We understand more of where the Americans are coming from. We've seen what with the Carney side of things, what they've had a lack of doing. And I think that's where the focus needs to be now. And how do you fill the void? The void that people are feeling right now is that they see a government that's not really doing anything for them. So how do you be a government, or how can you show that you're going to be a viable option in the space of that government? If we were to remove Carney tomorrow, what are you selling yourself as in order to encourage the Canadian people to vote for you instead of Mark Carney?
That's very true. So obviously, we have seen improvements, and as you said, now we can focus on the present and the future. What are your thoughts on what's going on lately? Like, we see the cabinet in terms of they're showcasing their talent, like with Shuv. This is the deepest cabinet, I think, in opposition we have. It's really starting to, I feel, act like a government in waiting, where they're going on all forms of media in Canada. They're showcasing like Shuv. Like, I have to mention Shuv again because, to sound kind of biased, he was with us at the influencer party, and he's just overall a great guy, and he understands like the geopolitics, whether it's with the US, the Middle East especially. That's something you should keep an eye on. Like, if you ever want to learn about the IRGC or CCP in Canada, like when Shuv comes on, we're going to really go in depth on that. But yeah, like, just to say, like, there's MPs like him and others who I feel are really getting people to say, hey, you know what? There is an option out there other than the Liberals. And do you see that as well?
Yeah, I think there's, some great folks that after this whole latest shadow cabinet shakeup, I think there's some great folks getting out there and speaking. I think Shu's been doing a great job as well. And I think a lot of right now, it seems in general, like you have a couple, like there's some good hearted shadow cabinet ministers at the moment who are making some good waves. But it still seems like the party itself is unsure of what their messaging is going to be. They're still unsure of how to handle this whole Trump thing. And I think it seems like they're waiting till September to really launch something. Because again, I haven't really even heard much from Pierre Poilievre. All I've been seeing is like clipping of old interviews that they've been reposting. So that's signifying to me that they're a little unsure of where they're going to go and still kind of in planning mode of how they're going to attack this. But if I'm looking at what's going on right now, like Trump is eating Carney's lunch, concession after concession after concession. I talked about it on my show this morning, where all the things that Mark Carney's conceding on, I typically agree with, aside from the Gordie Howe Bridge situation. Every other thing he's conceded on, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad he conceded on that because it was a terrible policy. It was a terrible program, like all of them. Like, yeah, it was all horrendous. And so I'm happy about that. But what I want to get to is the fact that no, but Liberals, you fought and said that these are good things. Don't you have any type of belief in what you say you believe in? Like, do you have any type of real solid conviction in anything? Because you guys folded on all these things you claim to really care about in a heartbeat. The consumer carbon tax being one of those things, right? So it's just like it's been concession after concession. And I think that it shows the weakness of them. And I think that's such an important time where let's really try to get in and show and highlight where the Conservatives could be doing something so much better and offering something at this present time. Like, there's an amazing opportunity at the moment to seize it. And it's just like, I'm just kind of hoping that they are putting together a great plan because I think there is an amazing opportunity at the moment because Carney's getting eviscerated in trade at the moment.
Agree. And I wanted to ask because, we're of the millennial generation, but we have Gen Z now, and we saw a ton of Gen Z at the convention. So this is a two-parter. First, what was your thoughts on the convention, and how do you feel about the future of Canadian conservatism with today's Gen Z becoming increasingly more conservative than past generations?
So I thought the convention was a good time. I think what is more so interesting about the convention is I think at the time it was good for what it was. And but what are we at? 6 months post now?
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I was shocked of how much has changed since that election, since the convention. And I'm starting to see the base wane in terms of support for Poilievre. There's a lot of question marks now. A lot of people are asking a lot of questions at the moment. And that's where I'm like, whoa, going from like an 82%, what is it, 87%?
It was 87 now to it's like, we see what's going on. Like, I mean, I don't have to give names of being propped up, to kind of they see they think they see an opportunity, and I'm not going to give their names. They don't deserve the attention, but you know what I mean, Josh. I'm sure you see it too in some weird way.
Yeah. So 87% at the convention, which we don't know what that number would be now. All I know is even the people who watch my show are asking more questions now than they did 6 months ago. And that is something to take into consideration if I'm Poilievre's team at the moment. And you said it yourself. On top of that, there's people who, I think this is what's frustrating, is we are witnessing Mark Carney flounder in ways that we didn't think were possible. And then who shows up and talks about it? Oh, it's people in the conservative circles who are looking for Poilievre's job. No one's highlighting the deficiencies of Mark Carney. No one's talking about the issues that we're seeing from his leadership. No, it's people in conservative circles are now saying, no, Poilievre's bad. I'm like, sorry, Poilievre's not the prime minister here, guys. Like, this is not helping us. No. And like the focus is the guy who's in control, and all he's done is put in laws that centralize power and censor people's speech. So I'm sorry. From how I grew up in Western values, that's a bad thing that someone believes that and is espousing and pushing for those policies. Let's not focus on, like, I know you have some issues, your personal problems with Poilievre, sure, whatever. Who cares? Because right now there's a guy in power who is floundering, yet you don't want to focus on him. Then I have to ask, why? What are your motives for not talking about Mark Carney and only talking about Poilievre is my question.
That's very true. I mean, yeah, the convention, it seems so far long ago in a galaxy far, far away. It was great. It was my first time in Calgary, and I got to meet you guys and amongst other great MPs. But it's like, you have to ask the same question. Like, why are we not focusing on the floundering of Carney here? What do you plan to do? Are you just going to be sort of like I don't want to criticize Aaron O'Toole too much because, he's a nice guy from what I've heard. But, some are going to say, are you going to be like an Aaron O'Toole 2.0 that just is like going to flip flop and flounder based on, because that's how some saw O'Toole's like leadership, where like he'd say one thing and do another. So that's the thing. And, the one thing with Pierre is like, he stands principled. Like, listen, I'll be honest, like, for example, one of the big issues for me, aside from Bill S-203, what got me involved in conservatism was obviously the affordability issues. Like, we can't afford a house. Groceries are still sky high. But the other thing, too, that, that I don't see the Liberal Party doing is I'm half Iranian through my late father. And look what's going on in Iran. And then look at the reports. 700 IRGC, like, accounted for. They can't be deported. By the way, Josh, it's not 700. It's in the thousands, okay? It's way worse than we thought. And the one thing that I appreciate about the Conservatives is, like, they're really, like, going towards the Iranian diaspora to say, like, we understand how you feel. I don't see the Liberals doing that. They gave, like, one response saying, we're not going to recognize the government until there's regime change. And then Carney, floundering, says, well, we're going to open up the Islamic Republic embassy. It's like, we already have Chinese police stations. You want to give the IRGC their version of that? Like, how much danger that's going to cause? And that's something that Sam Cooper highlights. So that's one thing that, as I said, that I really highlight with Pierre is like, look, whatever you have with him personally, and I've had moments too where I'm like, do I regret voting for him as leader? But then it's like, look, there is a chance to really go at Carney while he's floundering. But at the same time, questions should be asked, and then you shouldn't have to be attacked for asking those questions, which cause infighting and then the base to wane. And then people just say, well, I'm not conservative anymore. I'm just not, I don't even know anymore. It's a problem, Josh, and it's something that I don't like seeing considering what we've built upon.
Yeah, I think the one thing too, actually, I just interviewed Sam Cooper yesterday, and so we're releasing that episode today. And Sam brought something up that I think everyone in the conservative movement should just take into account, okay? There was a group that came forward who worked really hard to take down Aaron O'Toole. You can say what you want about Aaron O'Toole and his policies, but the one thing he was very good on was he was hawkish on China.
Yes.
And, well, the CCP and those associated with them weren't very huge fans of that. And so there are groups who came forward asking for Aaron O'Toole to step down because CCP wanted him out of the way. Those same groups have now come forward asking for Poilievre to step down and step away. So when you start seeing people who are starting to put their hand up saying, I can be a leader, I think you need to ask questions first and look into their background of who they are associated with. Because Sam brought up this. He said, yeah, you might want to get Poilievre out of the way. Maybe. Okay. But you have to ask who's behind him. And please do not get locked into your tunnel vision of politics and just ousting people for the sake of ousting them. there is a lot going on. The CCP and China are very involved in the conservative leadership, and they are very curious and want to make sure their guys who are less anti-China are involved. And that is something to keep in mind. And so, yeah, people can come at Pierre all they want. So be it. So, we can have that conversation at a different time. But at this point, he's our guy. He's the guy moving forward. Get used to it. And he's literally probably been, he's more hawkish on China than even Aaron O'Toole was. And so I think I'm going to go with the guy who I know. I don't know any of these fools who are coming up behind him and what their relationship is and how they view China. And so I'm going to go with the guy I know. So, and this is going to be, Pierre's got my support all the way.
Same. I'm anti-communist. As the saying goes, better dead than red.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean, as I said, my background is half Iranian through my father because he was born in Iran, and they saw what happened to that country pre-79. Like, they knew what was going to happen and then what would come after. That's why they came to Canada thinking they could, restart. But then, similar enough, it's like, look at the Emergencies Act, whether you like it or not. My mother's side, Jewish, Canadian, born in Canada, but of Belarusian, Russian, Jewish descent. They fled her family fled the pogroms and the Red Revolution. So when I start seeing the stuff with China or the Emergencies Act used because the liberals are playing this courtship with some form of authoritarianism, I get very, very angry, autistically angry with that. And I see the pattern where this is going because I have a degree in history and history is just cycles of what happens. So I agree with you with the Chinese, with the CCP interference. Look what happened with Joe Tay, for example. By the way, if you're in Toronto, I can't remember the ward, vote for Joe Tay for city councilor. Joe's an amazing person. You gotta love Joe, man. Joe is such a likable.
Oh, he's great. He's in the hotbed, right in Markham there. That's where he's going after. And he's a boss. I like Joe a lot. He's a silent assassin, which I really like about him. But I like what you just said though. Your autistic anger. There's no anger like autistic anger, man. It's real.
Oh man, as I said, look, you got to embrace it. I know, look, when some say you always have to mention you're autistic, it's like, guys, I do it for awareness because the problem is there's also many ways of people interpreting, neurodivergence, and it's it's a spectrum. So I'm trying to use it in a humorous way to educate people so then they can see it, because the other problem is too, a lot of people are going on ChatGPT and then TikTok and say, I think I'm this. Get a diagnosis, please. Stop relying on that, I was diagnosed in 7, but I'm just using it to create awareness and, hopefully motivates a few neurodivergent Canadians to vote Conservative because, we need minds that help the country move. And as Terry Newman said, neurodivergent people help make the world go round. She's a lovely person, by the way, from National Post. So
best. Yeah, we love Terry.
We love Terry. So what's your So what's the plan for the show in the future? I mean, it's gone through different iterations. It's doing phenomenal. I try to watch all the episodes I can, especially the ones with Dimpy. Got to give a shout out to Dimpy. She is such, whether you agree or disagree with her, she always brings great insight. And I think people should follow her. So I see plugged in Dimpy again. But what's the plan for the future where you want to take the show, and where do you see it going in terms of how it can help maritime conservatism for the future elections?
For sure. You can clip this part out, actually. I just got to say, I have to be out in 2 minutes, just a heads up.
Okay.
But to answer your question, sorry, where the show's going. So this is where I see the show going. I see us really trying to get the country back on track here. Would like to see a realignment in both parties. I want to see the Liberal Party come back to true liberal policies and be a party that looks to govern for Canada. And I want to see the same thing for the Conservative Party in general. That's where I want to see that alignment happening, and I want to see normalcy restored to our country. If we accomplish that, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm going back to being a designer, which I still do, but I'm going back to full-time designing and user experience, and I'm out of here. There is nothing about me. I love people. Oh, he's a grifter. He's like, dude, I have no interest in doing this if I don't have to be. I'm only here because I love my country. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. If we accomplish those things, the show is done. I'm leaving. Okay? If we don't accomplish those things, well, we are going to continue to grow. We're bringing awareness to all the different platforms of what's going on and kind of helping people see what's taking place in our country and growing where we need to grow. And yes, we have set up our own little newsroom. We're bringing on a plethora of different writers, and we're actually hiring 2 full-time staff to get things kicked off here in the fall to continue growing the work. So that's where my head's at with.
Fantastic. Well, Josh, I really want to thank you coming on. It's a long time coming. I mean, like, we made it happen finally, thanks to Dimpy. Where can people connect with you for socials? Because I mean, like, just plug it in here, because I know, like, it's like you got to be somewhere, as mentioned. I'm not clipping that out, by the way. It's okay. It happens. Don't worry. The show goes. We got to show it raw and unfiltered.
You're hilarious. You're hilarious. Okay. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram. Those are the places you can find us at the Elev8 Report. You can find us all there. And if you want to email me directly, you can email me at hi@elev8report.ca. We try our best to look into that inbox as best as possible. And that's where you can find me. So thank you all for listening. You guys are amazing.
Amazing. Well, Josh, really thank you once again. People, if you like the show, go to the Elev8 Report, subscribe, and hype up the DrewXperience, because we're back. Canadian politics, geopolitics with Iran and Canada, etc. So make sure that like, share, subscribe, hype button. Josh, thank you so much for doing this. I hope I was a great host, and I lived up to expectation.
That's what you get, my man. That's what you get. You get the sirens. You did a great job, man. You do know.
Amazing. Well, keep up the great work, man. It's a pleasure to do this, and hopefully we can do it again, maybe with Dimpy or Reg. Like, I'd love to have you on again.
Absolutely. Oh, Reg would love to be involved, 100%. No, Reg would love
to do it.
Yeah.